Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Nessie's Dead. As always, we are your hosts, Spencer and Helen.
Hello.
Hello. It's been a little while, 2 weeks since we brought everyone a new episode.
Yeah, we had to take a little break there. Sometimes it gets too much.
Yeah, we had to shake the dust off, and now we're rising out of our coffins.
We're back.
And we're back with a really unique episode, actually.
Okay.
I am so excited to talk about this one. It is very weird. I don't want to oversell it as super crazy and weird, but it is very weird. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not more talked about within true crime podcasting.
I'm intrigued.
It's very different for what I typically cover. It's different for Nessie's Dead as well. We have not really covered anything in the likes of this at all yet. So it's very unique. I'm not going to give you really much of a top line or summary or preview at all because I want your reaction as you blind react to this. I want it to be as shocked and fresh as possible.
Okay, hopefully I don't know it.
Oh my God. I always try to find things that you're not going to be super familiar with. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I bet she knows this one. And then you're like, yeah, no, I've never heard of it. This one, I'm like, oh, there's no way she knows it. And watch, you probably know every detail.
Let's hope not.
But what I will tell you is that it involves attempted necromancy and intended cloning.
What? Okay.
Yeah. And it's a true crime case. It takes place in Russia. So I think it's probably more talked about, obviously, over in Russia, opposed to here in the States. But it's not the kind of true crime case that it's not a mystery. It does not involve a serial killer. It does not involve it's not a weird unexplained death or missing person case. It's kind of its own little entity of uniqueness.
This is really interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And just a quick trigger warning for our hordes of devoted fans. We will be talking about children in this episode. It is not predatory kind of talk. So just FYI.
Okay.
Also, one little disclaimer. All of the names are going to be Russian. I do not speak Russian, but I will do my best to pronounce them, but I probably will not get it very on point. But without further ado, let's go ahead and take the plunge into the very strange case and life of Anatoly Moskvin.
I don't think I know this. Okay.
Yeah, I hope you don't.
Let's plunge.
So, Anatoly Moskvin was born September 1st, 1966 in Gorky, Russia. The town of Gorky, Russia, or the city, I will say, the city of Gorky, Russia, as of 1990, has been known as Nizhny Novgorod, which I assume I pronounced incorrect, but
Close
he was
enough.
born. Yeah, pretty close. He was born to parents Elvira and Yuri Moskvin. His parents described him as a very unique child with very special interests, and he was very intelligent. However, his childhood was sadly met with a good amount of trauma and struggle. Now, in school, he did really, really well. He really took well to studying. He always had his nose in a book. He got really, really good grades. He was a very quick learner, but he did not have very good social understanding. He didn't have friends.
Okay.
Socialization was not his thing as a child or as an adult, and it kind of led to him being ostracized and bullied, unfortunately. But then one day in the 3rd grade, Anatoly came home and he was covered in bruises. It turned out that he'd been assaulted by a stranger on the way home earlier that day.
Oh, man.
Yeah, very sad. It was unclear who this person was, and it was also unclear if he had initially told his parents. I'm not really sure of that whole story or how that went down or what he told his parents, if he told them anything at first. I do think that he eventually told them that he was attacked, but I don't know all the details around that, other than the fact that he obviously had gone through a great deal of trauma because of that. But as he continued to grow up, he was infatuated with graveyards, which I feel relatively relatable to that.
Yeah, definitely.
But he was like really infatuated with graveyards and just with the macabre in general, which again, relatable, but he like really
Took it to the extreme.
Yeah, he would hang out regularly in graveyards, and this kind of became like a hobby for him and kind of led him to his career into adulthood, actually. But before he became an adult, when he was 12 or 13 years old, he had a very dark and very unsettling encounter with a group of strangers in March of 1979.
Again?
Yeah, this is very, very different.
Oh, okay.
So he was walking home from school or picking up papers for a recycling program that was part of his school. It was kind of, there are different reports about that, but either way, he was alone and he was walking. He ends up walking into a neighborhood that he's not familiar with.
Okay.
Everything is seemingly going normal. That is, until a group of men dressed in nice black suits approach him and reportedly drag him towards this house on this block that he's walking on. And now there are some reports that suggest that he stumbled onto this block and walked into this yard for whatever reason. But either way, he makes his way to this house. He sees a group of people also dressed very nicely in all black, and they're all standing around a coffin.
This is weird.
Yeah. Now, the coffin was open, and inside was the body of 11-year-old girl, Natasha Petrova. They were having an open casket funeral, just kind of like in the yard in this neighborhood, which is very weird.
And they just dragged him over there?
Yes, reportedly.
Oh.
Or he stumbled into it. But when he saw what was happening, he kind of got freaked out and tried to leave. The people at the funeral grabbed him and dragged him back.
Oh, that's so odd.
It is very odd. So Anatoly is understandably very freaked out. He's very confused as to what's happening. Like, he knows there's a funeral, but he does not really understand why he's there and why the people want him there, these total strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, well, also, I forgot to mention, no one at the funeral spoke English. They spoke a language he was not familiar with.
That didn't help.
No, I'm sure that makes it much creepier.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're like 12 years old.
Yeah.
But they start instructing him to do something. And he realizes that they're telling him to lean down into the casket and kiss the forehead of the corpse.
Oh, no. I couldn't.
I guess there was a woman there who was like really trying to get him to do it. And he believes that this was the little girl, Natasha. He believes that this was her mother. He was like, no, I don't want to do that. And she was like, no, do it. And he starts crying, and he like just really doesn't want to do it. He kind of realizes that he thinks he has no choice. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. He kind of like leans in towards the casket. And as he gets closer, someone comes up behind him, grabs the back of his head, and kind of forces him down, like to make sure that he does actually do this.
Oh my gosh.
And he kisses the forehead of the corpse. He described it as the waxy forehead.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
So he kisses the forehead of the corpse multiple times, and then he thinks that it's over with. But then the woman that he believes was the girl's mother pulls out 2 rings. She puts one on the dead girl's finger and the other on Anatoly's finger. All while this is happening, they're all chanting or praying in a different language. And obviously he has no idea what's going on, but he believes that this was some kind of strange occult marriage.
Oh.
To either the girl's spirit or to the corpse itself. I don't know why. I don't know what kind of practice that is or would be. But he has since confirmed that he fully believes that he is like married to this dead girl on some level.
I think I know this.
The case?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I hope not. Oh my gosh.
I think so. Continue, though.
We'll see. But after this was all done, he was handed a fruit basket and cash for his troubles. And he was then sent away. When he like ran off. You know, he was terrified. He was so distraught that he threw the fruit basket on the ground. Then he went to a nearby bookshop and bought a book with the cash they gave him. I'm not sure if I think he did tell his parents about this event. I'm not totally sure. But supposedly, I don't know how he knew this because he didn't speak the same language as these people. But he was supposedly instructed to not tell anyone about this event for 40 days. I don't know what that time period has to do with anything, but...
This is all, like, the oddest thing ever.
Yeah, very creepy. As an adult, Anatoly wrote about how impactful this really strange funeral experience was for him, and he actually credits it for leading to a fascination with death and the occult. And he ends up going on to study the occult. At one point, he kind of joins a Luciferian church, which is fun, I guess. But he claims that the ghost of the girl, Natasha, would come to him regularly in his dreams, and that in these dreams, she would offer him help on how to learn dark magic. And along with that, she would ask him to regularly visit her grave. He was very much so convinced that this was the ghost coming to him in his sleep. And he would go visit her gravesite, and he said that when he started visiting the gravesite and studying magic, she would kind of leave him alone. But if he wasn't actively doing these things, she would come back and haunt him. Now, as a kid, Anatoly did tell his parents that he was being haunted. I feel like he would have told them about the weird funeral experience as well. But his parents were obviously very concerned. So they took him to a therapist. I don't know if they believed him at all, but they take him to a therapist. And the therapist said that he was just having puberty-induced stress.
That's a weird diagnosis for a haunting.
Yeah. I don't know if that's like a 1970s Russian therapy thing or I don't know, but that's probably not great therapy work.
No, maybe it was popular at the time.
Perhaps. But from there, he continues to live a relatively reclusive life, just kind of exploring graveyards and studying strange things and studying death. He ends up attending college at the Moscow State University. While there, he studied language and history with an emphasis on Celtic studies, specifically studying different kinds of death practices throughout history, which sounds like a really fascinating area of study.
Yeah, it does.
Like, I would take that class.
Yeah.
He actually went on to become fluent in 13 languages.
Damn.
And yeah, 13. I can barely speak English.
Me too.
And he also developed an interest in dolls, and he had quite the collection of Russian dolls at his home.
I love that.
Yeah, you collect dolls.
I do.
You collect haunted dolls.
I do.
I do not. Alongside collecting dolls, he also collected over 60,000 books and documents on history, death, and the occult. He
Sounds like a hoarder.
Yeah, well, I'll send you a photo of his apartment.
Okay.
It was very messy. I think he did have some hoarding tendencies for sure. He also became a lecturer at a local university. I think through this, he started working with children. He loved children. He really wanted to help children, work with children. He was a language tutor, and his family said that the only time they really saw him truly comfortable in a social setting or truly happy even was when he was working with the kids, which is very sweet and wholesome.
That's good. It's rare that you find somebody that's actually doing something wholesome.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, is it going to change?
Yes, it does not get, he's never bad or creepy to children.
Okay, good.
So that's good. He's creepy, but it's not in that, it's not in the way, it's not in that horrible, scary way that it seems. But let's continue on. So He also worked at the Institute of Foreign Languages and went on to write a collection of books, papers, and journals on language and translation. These writings actually became really well known within the academic circles, and he was pretty well respected in his field. But his colleagues, as much as they respected him, they were not fans of him, really. He did not get along well with people. He was not very easy to work with. And they claimed that his kind of odd, eccentric interests kind of creeped them out.
Mm. So he was still the oddball, the outcast?
Yeah, he never really made friends, I feel.
Yeah, sounds like it.
This kind of ended up leading to him. I think he was forced to resign from some of the work, and he ends up just kind of doing freelance writing stuff.
Oh, they didn't like him that much that they were like, nah, he's got to go.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems. Like in the research, that's kind of what it seems like, because he ends up not working in these companies anymore, or like at the, what's it called? At the university or lectures or whatever.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, but he does continue to pursue his real passion, which was around death. He continues to explore cemeteries, and he states that over a 3-year period, he had visited over 750 cemeteries.
Damn, he was really into that.
Yeah, and while he was actually doing some kind of project, doing something historically, I can't quite think of the terminology for it, but he would study every single person buried at all of these cemeteries. And it was like a catalog of information on the cemeteries. It was like really in-depth work. And while he was doing this, like going around to all of these different cemeteries around the area, he did it all on foot. He would even sleep in the cemeteries. At one point, he slept in an empty coffin that was like someone was going to be buried in it the next day, and he found it, so he slept in it.
This guy's obsessed.
Yeah, well, you'll see his obsession gets weirder. He felt especially connected, though, to the graves of the children that were buried in the cemeteries, so much so that he would actually sleep on top of the children's graves.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where things start to get a little bit creepier.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So he believed that sleeping on top of the grave would help him connect to the corpse that was buried underneath. He believed that he was telepathically communicating with them. However, he stated that he would only sleep on the graves of the children that liked him.
So he felt like he could tell?
Yeah. He thought he was talking to them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So imagine, when you and I... What?
Yeah, imagine being like the parents of those kids or something. You go to visit and there's some strange man laying on the grave like, oh, I'm talking to them.
Yeah, that kind of comes up.
Oh, God.
You don't know this case still?
I think I do, but I'm not sure. Okay. So keep going.
So meanwhile, outside of sleeping on graves, he remained pretty socially isolated. And he was still living with his parents in an apartment. However, the parents would be away from April to October, and they would take the family cat with them. So he was alone late spring into early fall. Mm. And I guess he really, even though he was kind of a recluse, he did not like being alone at home. But he had also taken a vow of celibacy, supposedly through a Luciferian church. And he was very anti-sex. Like, he did not support sexual activity at all, at least for himself. He actually ends up in an asexual, non-romantic relationship with a woman named Yulia, which, to me, a non-sexual, non-romantic relationship would
be a friendship.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
However, they did consider themselves a couple. They were both enthralled with the idea of becoming parents. That was kind of Anatoly's big thing. He really wanted to be a father. He loved children, and he really believed he would be a really great dad one day.
You kind of got to have sex to do that, dude.
Yes. So because of the vow of celibacy, they decided to adopt. They applied for adoption, and they found a little girl that they were going to adopt in 2003.
Wait, somebody's going to give these weirdos a kiddo?
No, they were denied.
Okay, I was going to say, absolutely not.
They were denied for financial reasons. He was not really making any money at this point because he was kind of just freelance writing.
Not because he likes to sleep on children's graves and
I don't know if the adoption agency was aware of his grave sleeping.
They should have been. Does he end up having kids? Or is that a spoiler?
In theory.
Like, does he actually, like, have a child?
You'll see.
Oh, God. Okay.
So he was denied the adoption, and his parents were thrilled that the denial happened because they were really not a fan of the idea of him adopting a child at all.
Yeah, they probably knew it was their kid. They're probably like, oh, not this weirdo.
And, well, also they all lived together in this one kind of small apartment.
With the girlfriend?
I don't know if she lived there. There's really very little information on her, but the kid would have been in this apartment with the parents.
Yeah, they're like, that's too many.
Yeah, this very messy apartment, which let me go ahead, and this will be linked on Reddit. I think it might make its way into the little preview or the promotional videos that we make, but
okay.
I'm going to go ahead and send you a photo. It's kind of blurry, but a photo of the apartment itself.
Okay.
Let me just make sure that there are no spoilers in this picture.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of giving hoarder.
It's giving hoarder.
Not kind of. Yeah, it absolutely is hoarder.
That's so weird how that stuff is stacked up. It looks like it's stacked in a certain shape.
What
Strategically in the background, it looks like he stacked it like a pyramid.
Yeah, it's almost like he was like, oh, I can't let it be messy on this one corner of this bunk bed.
Oh, that's a bunk bed? Ooh,
is it? I don't know. It looks like a bunk bed with the little ladder leading to the top bunk.
Maybe. That's a mess.
Maybe that messy pile is a Christmas tree. I don't know.
No, that's definitely a messy pile. Stacked strategically. That's weird.
So, yeah, he wanted to adopt the kid and bring this child into this very messy apartment with his parents.
It's a horrible environment to raise a child.
Yeah. But his parents, like I said, were thrilled that the adoption did not work. They were very against it. And this actually, because of the adoption denial, this ended up causing Anatoly and Yulia to break up. This is kind of what sets him off and takes him to the next level of his infatuation. In May of 2003, he's denied the adoption. Him and his girlfriend break up, and he gets in a big fight with his parents. He ends up running off, or not running off, but after the big argument, he's like, fine, if, you don't support me having a child, blah, blah, I'll just make it happen through black magic. And his mom was like, yeah, whatever. Okay, just go do what you want.
I mean, like, you wouldn't really believe that was going to happen. So it's kind of like, okay, all right.
Yeah, sure. She was used to him being kind of strange and eccentric. So she kind of just was like, okay, whatever.
Good luck.
However, little does she know that he was going to really do this. So, like I said, that was in May of 2003.
Okay.
Quickly, I just want to kind of fast forward to the year 2009. 2009 was the year that sort of starts to mark the period of oddness happening in the town and around the town that they lived in. And it ends up leading to Anatoly's arrest.
He's digging up bodies, isn't he?
Stop it.
Okay.
So in 2009, police in the area were getting reports of graves being disturbed. The police had no leads, but they did believe that it was the work of an extremist group because some of the graves that were being disturbed were Muslim graves. A lot of them were also being vandalized. So the police were assuming that it was some kind of awful extremist group. Then about 2 years go by before the police end up having their eye on Anatoly. In 2011, he wrote some kind of controversial journals leading to him being put on a potential extremist group. So I guess he was anti-Muslim. That's definitely not good. That's how he ends up getting caught. So like I said, the police have their eye on him in 2011, and they actually end up catching him desecrating graves in a Muslim cemetery. He was actually painting over, like on the gravestones, there were faces of the people buried, and he was painting over them for some reason.
Oh, no.
Yeah. They arrest him, and when they arrest him, they decide to go check his apartment, thinking that they were going to find ties to terrorism or that he was connected to some extremist group. That was not at all what they found in the home.
Oh, I can't. I'm like, my mind is going wild.
Ready. So in the home that he, remember, shared with his parents,
Mm-hmm.
police found maps of local cemeteries, doll building manuals, and plaques and photos from and of local gravestones. Oh, and they found his doll collection. Remember, he collected dolls.
Mm-hmm.
But when the police were looking at the doll collections, he had his Russian dolls.
Yeah.
And then they noticed these larger, life-size dolls.
Oh, no.
That they believed were big antique dolls that had been dressed up in very strange attire, including masks and button eyes. He had 26 of these large dolls.
They're people.
But upon closer inspection, the police noticed that they are not at all dolls, but they are actually very real mummified corpses of dead children.
Oh my God. How did his parents not notice this? I would think it would smell.
It did. And we'll get into all of that because now we will discuss his grave robbing crimes.
Oh, jeez. What a whack job. Just sitting in that messy apartment, 26 of them?
Some reports said 29, but officially we know 26 for sure.
How did they have room for all that?
I don't. Hoarders find room.
I just had to been like stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, and we'll get to where some of them were kept as well.
Oh, God.
But all of the dolls were female. They were between the ages of 3 and 12. They wore masks made of fabric. So he would like cover their faces in fabric and then paint makeup over them. Some also had fabric wrapped over their hands. Some of them also had plastic masks over their faces, or he would take break a face off of a doll and place that on top of the face. Some of them had button eyes. Some of them had toy eyes, like off of a doll.
Mm.
And a lot of them were sewn into the eye socket themselves.
Up.
Yeah. Most of them were dressed in the original clothes that they were buried in. However, some were dressed in new outfits. There was one that was wearing like weird, really tall boots. I don't know where he found those, but so when the dolls moved, they would make a jingling noise because this is so creepy. Anatoly had placed music boxes inside of their rib cages and then sewn them back up.
Oh, God.
So whenever he would move them, they would make noise.
This guy.
Also, some of the bodies had other things inside of the rib cage, including one had a dried human heart. I don't think it was her own heart, but a dried human heart. Another had a chunk of her own gravestone inside her rib cage. And then there was another one that had the date and cause of death inside of her. Like
he wrote it down and stuffed it in there?
It seems like it was a piece from the hospital. I think she would have maybe been buried with it.
Oh.
And he opened them up and put these items inside of the corpses.
Sewed them back up. You know, very normal things to do in your
so
apartment.
You and I have an interest in the macabre. We love like a graveyard picnic or graveyard walk, but we are not at this level.
No.
For sure.
I'm just like, how old is he at this point? Do you know?
This was in 2011. He was born in 1966. I don't know that math, but he's late 40s?
A little too old to be
playing with dolls.
Yeah.
So these mummy dolls had been collected up to almost 10 years at this point. It all began on May 9th, 2003, after his breakup, the fight he had with his mom regarding the adoption denial. Anatoly states that he got in a fight with his parents and stormed out of the apartment. He told his mom he was going to go do black magic so that he could have his own daughter. He took to a nearby cemetery with the intention to perform necromancy so that he could resurrect a little girl. He said that he dug down to the coffin, chiseled out a hole in the top of it, and pulled the body out. This way, it was the least amount of damage done to the coffin and to the body.
And nobody noticed this going on?
No.
That's
for
so
almost 10
odd.
years.
I feel like I would notice, like, if... I don't know.
Yeah. He must have done it at night. I don't know. I don't know how grave robbers usually get away with that activity.
It just seems like a lot of work, and nobody notices it.
Yeah, well, and no one really noticed that the graves were disturbed other than maybe one or two families. But even then, they didn't notice that it had been dug up. He was like really strategic with it. He also stated that he wanted to be very careful and respectful so that he did not cause any trauma to the families in case they came to visit the grave. He didn't want to stress them out or concern them. He just wanted
he was just making them into human dolls and keeping the bodies. Okay. That's logical.
Yeah. But after he pulled the body out, for this first incident, he took the body to a corner of the cemetery that was a little more secluded. He found an abandoned grave that had just not been used. I guess it was dug and they never put a body in it. So he placed the little girl's body in this abandoned grave. And this is where he began his mummification work, which we will discuss a little bit more in depth with what he did in a moment. But he found clothes from a nearby trash can and dressed the little girl in these new clothes. He also found nail polish in the trash can and painted over her face with it to kind of give her a finish, which is very creepy to think about.
Yes.
But he took the body home July 2003. He did this by stuffing it in his backpack and casually walking home. So it must have been a pretty big backpack, or maybe this was
a little girl.
She might because the youngest was about 3 years old, so she could have just been about 3.
Jeez.
Yeah. So with this first quote doll, he made a mask out of nylon and he wrapped it over her face, and then he poured wax over it to create the next level of the mask.
That sounds so creepy to envision.
I know. So yeah, the nylon kind of acted as the base. The wax was then used to kind of top it. And then he painted over with nail polish to seal and finish it. And from there, his dark obsession continued, leading to, like I said before, at least 26 mummified, quote, dolls.
That process, when I envision it, seems very creepy. That would look...
Yeah.
Unnatural, and his parents weren't like, what the fuck are those?
I know. And we'll touch on what his parents thought, of course, but I guess a lot of the work was done between April and October when the parents and Kat were away, and
they came home and
they came home to very oddly looking dolls. And also, actually, let me go ahead, and this will also be linked online on Reddit and in the little promo video, but I'm going to go ahead and send you a photo of the doll.
I was afraid you were going to do this.
I'll send you 2 dolls.
This is going to give me nightmares. Oh, I hate it.
It's very unsettling. This is one of those cases that when I was doing the research, because when you're in the research, you're kind of just go with it.
Yeah.
And then when you put it down and take a step away to get water or go to bed or whatever, it's one of those cases where I was felt really weird and heavy, and just I was kind of I don't really want to research this anymore. It's not like researching a monster case or aliens. It's not very fun. So this was kind of a draining one. After each time I closed the notebook, I was like, oh, okay, I think I need to watch a cartoon, because this is just it's not it's not a serial killer. It's not a missing person case. It's just so
unsettling.
Gross. Yeah. But when he was at home with the dolls, he claimed that he would sit and eat dinner with them, but he did make sure to note that they did not eat. Obviously.
You think?
Yeah. But he said he always offered them food to be polite. He would also sing to them and play children's songs, and he would have birthday parties, and they would celebrate holidays together. He also regularly talked to them, and he regularly kept up with their mummification upkeep. He said he was incredibly careful and good to them, so much he wouldn't even swear around them. He really
treated them like children.
Yes, he he even stated, he was like, I did everything as if they were my live daughters, and all these things that I did with them, I will do once I have a live daughter.
Good luck.
And he really did believe these were his daughters, and they were all just temporarily dead because he had intended on either using their corpses for cloning to use their DNA or to do some kind of necromancy ritual.
And now just these corpses reanimated?
Yeah. So kind of Frankenstein, but with a little bit of a weirder twist, I guess.
This guy is delusional.
Yes, I would agree.
Good God.
He did state also that he knew that this was illegal, but he cared more about taking care of the little girls and seeing that they had a good home that was not in the ground. And he cared more about that than he did the law. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously. That one. Oh my gosh. I'm still stuck on the fact that the parents aren't more curious about why he's tending to these dolls like this, why he's talking to them, singing to them, eating meals with them, like setting them up like they're people.
I know. The parents, I'm not going to blame them necessarily, but I feel like they were a little bit too nonchalant and very just like...
Especially when this is like a 40-year-old man.
Yeah, they really just kind of turned a blind eye to everything. And again, we'll get to the parents and everything in a moment, but I find it very odd that, to me, there would be obvious reason of concern, but then I think, okay, the home was obviously a wreck. Mm-hmm. They were obviously hoarders. Maybe they were all really mentally ill and it didn't quite click in their head. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe their parents weren't all there.
They seemed sound of mind, though, after everything happened. So maybe they were just kind of dumb? I don't know.
I don't know. That's just odd.
We'll definitely get to that.
Okay.
But first, I'll get back to some of the stuff he did with the dolls. So he drilled holes into their eyes, claiming that this was so the girls could watch cartoons with him. Mm. He would drill into the eye socket, which I don't understand why he thought putting holes into the eyes would help them see anything. But I guess when you think that this is okay and or that these are your children, then
nothing really makes sense.
No logic there anyway.
Yeah, there's no logic to anything at this point.
Now, he said that his parents were not involved. They were unaware completely. He did not let anyone else into this world. But it is, like you brought up, it's hard to imagine the parents never thought too much of this. But I guess when he would talk to them, his mom she would kind of shame him and be like, stop talking to the doll. Why are you doing that? That's really weird. You're an adult. Like, why are you playing with dolls? Mm-hmm. And he would just kind of shrug it off and be like, whatever. She doesn't get it, you know? But the neighbors in the apartment building, they were also aware of him being kind of strange. And they claimed that when they passed by and the front door was open, you could smell a horrible rotting scent.
I was going to say, I bet the neighbors could smell that.
Do you know what they thought it was?
The garbage, the hoarding?
They thought, well, perhaps, yeah. But they thought that it was coming from the basement. I don't know what kind of apartment this is, but maybe the apartment was kind of townhouse-like, and they had a basement for each apartment. But they believed that it was a rotting smell coming from a drainage problem. Oh. Which I could get, but that's not, I don't know, that's not normal either.
No. Well, unless all the neighbors were having, like, water drainage issues, and
maybe.
They were like, oh, they're just nasty people to begin with. Their house is hoarded. They're probably not taking care of it like we are.
Perhaps, yeah. Mm-hmm. But Anatoly did have one of his... He had favorites, and he said that his favorites would live in the house, and his least favorites would stay in the garage. He had his main favorite, which he called Masha. One night, he brought her out while his aunt came over for dinner, and he sat Masha at the dinner table and introduced her to the aunt. And I'm sure the aunt was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And he actually told his aunt not to fear Masha. And like I said, Masha was his favorite. And guess where she lived or stayed?
Not in his bed.
No, in his parents' room. So he not only kept these, quote, dolls all over the apartment and garage, not only did they jingle when they moved and look horribly creepy, they also were kept in the parents' bedroom.
I'm starting to believe the parents weren't all there either, mentally.
That's the thing that makes the most sense.
Yeah, because I can't imagine if my child put something creepy like that in my room.
Yeah, you wouldn't be like, yeah, that can stay.
I wouldn't be like, yeah, whatever, it smells awful.
It's staring at me with doll eyes or button eyes. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about his mummification process.
Okay.
So we have touched on it, but Anatoly did explain that with all of the mummification, he was very polite, very gentle, very respectful. He really just wanted to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
And like he wouldn't even swear around them. He explained that with the first grave robbery, he made a mixture of salt and baking soda, and he would fill this mixture into bags and then tie the bags around the body. And remember, this was in May 2003. He was keeping this particular body in a secluded part of the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And he would visit weekly to change out the bags. He said that if anyone saw him at the cemetery with these bags, he would tell them that he was there feeding breadcrumbs to the birds. But you're doing it in a weird corner by yourself with no birds, and you're not throwing breadcrumbs around. Like, obviously, that's weird.
Mm-hmm. Nobody was like, what in the world? Let's go check it out when he leaves.
Yeah, I would have.
Yeah, I would have been like, what is he doing? Let's go look when he goes.
Especially in a cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
But from there, once the body was home, he would open it up, stuff it with rags and salt and baking soda mixture, and then stitch it back up. He would then wrap the nylons over the hands and faces and would proceed to add the doll faces or the masks or the wax to create the mask. And then he would do the makeup. And he said that he added the makeup to make them more lifelike, which is very unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
They also, like I said, were usually dressed in what they had been buried in, but sometimes they got new clothes. Now, Anatoly was initially charged with the desecration of graves and dead bodies, which would have gotten him 5 years in prison. However, after his first trial, he was deemed unfit to stand trial anymore and was then admitted to a psychiatric hospital.
Good, that seems like where he should have been a long time ago.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It was determined that he had paranoid schizophrenia, and he was released from criminal liability because they just were like, well, he's obviously very mentally unwell.
Yeah.
So he was not held accountable at all.
Well, I mean, what can you do? He doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. He wasn't
Correct.
being like malicious. He wasn't like, I'm going to do these terrible things. He just thought he was doing something good.
Yeah, but obviously victims, the parents of these children that he collected, they did not see it that way. In his first court hearing, the parents of the girls showed up. They were shouting out that he needed to be put in prison for life. They shout out that he needed the death penalty. They were not having it. They wanted him criminally charged, not just placed in a psych ward.
Yeah, I would be outraged if it was my child.
Yeah, and there's one parent in particular that we're going to talk about who really has, I think, even more reason to want him in prison. But before he was diagnosed schizophrenic and deemed unfit to stand trial, he was initially ordered to pay $75,000 in moral damages to these families. However, this is fascinating. One father of the little girls that he collected stated that he was not going to accept any compensation at all. He said that he would not take it because Anatoly treated his daughter better in death than he did in life.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so this one guy was like, I was a bad dad. This guy was better, so he was fine with it.
Damn.
That's also sick to me.
Yeah.
But to all the rest of the parents who were very rightfully upset with Anatoly, Anatoly had this to say, quote, "You abandoned your girls. I brought them home and warmed them up."
Ew.
Yeah. Like, he really was convinced that he was doing the right thing and that these parents were in the wrong for not continuing to take care of their dead child.
I mean, death of a child is already such a hard thing
Yeah.
to imagine. And then this happens?
Yeah.
Ugh.
So he also stated that he's locked up in the psych ward right now, and the little girls' bodies have all been placed back into their graves.
Yeah.
And they've been, I guess, I don't really know exactly all the details with how they took care of the situation, like if they, quote, like, demummified.
I would think they would have taken off like the nylons and the mask.
At least take off the strange attire.
Yeah.
But they are placed back in their graves, and Anatoly stated not to bury them too deep because once he's out, he will dig them back up.
Oh, he's never getting out.
Well, he seems...
Oh, no.
It seems like he's doing very well in the psych ward. He's kind of being studied and evaluated. He's kind of seen as a special case. I guess right now he's showing a lot of, quote, improvement.
Or is this just fake so he can get out?
I don't know.
Do it again.
His parents, Anatoly's parents, they do not want him released at all. And they think that he needs to stay in for very obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents actually were both hospitalized with stress-induced problems when they found out about the dolls.
Well, yeah, I don't know how they wouldn't realize, but just imagine now knowing that you've been living with a house full of corpses.
Yeah. They've been totally ostracized within their own community. Everyone kind of hates them and blames them for their son's actions. And the mom, Elvira, suggested to the father that they should kill themselves together because of the trauma, which that makes me wonder how much they really knew versus didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And because how do you live in that circumstance? How do you not think anything of it? Well, your adult son puts strange dolls in your room and talks to them.
And it smells. And they're wearing, some of them are wearing the clothes they were buried in. That can't be very hygienically.
No.
You know,
they had to have dirt on the clothes at least or something. I mean.
Or like the body is going to rot.
Yeah, well, he did the whole mummification process with the nylons and
no, I mean beforehand.
Oh yeah, they were already pretty rotted, I feel.
Yeah.
Obviously nothing that was just skeleton or too decomposed, but I mean, salt and baking soda inside is not going to preserve something for too long. And he did this for almost 10 years.
I just don't understand how that can just be a blind eye.
I don't know. That's why I can't help but think maybe they're very mentally unwell, or that maybe they just didn't want to acknowledge it. Maybe they had a feeling, but maybe they were afraid of him. Perhaps. Like maybe there's way more to their dynamic that we're probably never going to know.
Did they die?
No, I think they're still alive.
Somebody needs to put them in a place and do some research on them because there's no way, especially in an apartment setting like that.
Yeah, it wasn't like a big house. And, there were a lot of people are like, well, they were away for like half the year, but they were still there half the year too.
Exactly.
But speaking of parents, one parent in particular, her name was Natalia Shardimova, is, I think, a little especially traumatized by Anatoly's grave robbing. Not to play down the other parents' responses or feelings or whatnot. But Natalia's daughter, Olga, had sadly been murdered at the age of 10 while walking from her home to her grandmother's home in, I think, 2002. Olga, it was her first time walking alone to her grandma's house, and it was just around the corner, like really, really close. And she was robbed and murdered by a drug addict, I think at her building that she lived in. Her body was actually missing for 5 months, and they ended up finding her, and she was buried. And of course, the family went through a lot of trauma having the daughter, their 10-year-old little girl, be murdered.
Yeah.
But Anatoly dug her up in 2003. But it's very, very sad and very unsettling to think about Natalia and her husband and their whole family visiting Olga's grave with no idea that she has not been there for almost 10 years.
That's
And
heartbreaking.
that this whole time she's mummified
In some guy's apartment.
Yeah.
Oh.
And what's really horrible, actually, is that they would come visit the grave and they would notice weird letters and just kind of like weird like disturbances around the grave site.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't notice anything like a grave robbing, but they would notice that things were taken from other graves and placed on Olga's, or the letters and just little things like that.
Yeah.
And Anatoly was sending letters to Olga's grave while he had her mummified in his home. And he would send her letters to the grave saying things like, happy first day of school. He would decorate her grave on New Year's Day. And her parents were horribly freaked out and bothered by this. And they had no idea who this was or what was going on. And when they reported it to the police were like, well, there's really nothing we can do. However, if you find who this is, we will look away and you can do whatever you want to them.
I mean, that's so odd and disturbing to know that there was someone out there visiting your family member's grave that you don't know.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the family member wasn't even in
there. That person
grave.
Had them.
Yeah, which kind of is just tormenting the parents. And
yeah.
I don't know, it's crazy to think about that, but also the way that Natalia found out about Olga being one of the, quote, dolls. It was, I think, a kind of year-long process of investigating Anatoly's case. And in 2011, police asked her if she would attend to check and see if Olga was still buried in the grave. And I'm sure she's like, why on earth are you asking me that?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they went, and to the family's horror, the coffin was empty. That's how they discovered that Anatoly had her this whole time. She is very adamant that he should not be in the psych ward. He should be in prison. And she wants him to be like...
dead.
I don't know about dead, but she wants him to be tortured in prison.
Yeah.
And
For the torture he's done to them mentally.
Yeah. Anatoly, I don't think, thinks anything of it. Because he, again, thinks that he was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And
he thinks he was treating them well.
Mm-hmm. Natalia actually wants Anatoly to do really well and prove that he is sane so that he can get out, do it again, and get in even more real trouble. And she wants to testify him and get him in prison. I guess, apparently, she can see the hospital that he's kept at from her house.
Oh my gosh, how do you live like that?
I know. It's terrifying to think of all of that.
Yeah.
And what's also really strange is that I think most people have the kind of same idea that Anatoly was wrong. He's sick.
Yeah.
Mentally unwell.
Yeah.
But I stumbled on a website and it's collecting signatures for his release.
No.
And it explains that Anatoly was a good guy who just...
No.
He was taking care of these little girls and that he did nothing wrong. And it has 16 signatures. I just can't believe that. I was like, what? Regardless of where people stand on it, I feel like that is a little bit too far.
Mm-hmm. Definitely too far.
I don't know where other people stand on it, but I just pulled the website up and it says Anatoly Moskvin is being unjustly imprisoned in a psychiatric ward for showing a great deal of tender, loving care to dead children. Please help free him from this injustice.
No, he's exactly where he needs to be.
And it's actually, the thing is addressed to Donald Trump.
I don't think he would.
And the United States Senate. And he's in Russia.
There's no way this guy's going anywhere but where he's at. He can't. I don't think he can function in society.
No. I mean, he functioned fine, which I think is what's kind of interesting, is that he just had unique interests and functioned fine, socially awkward, but then becomes a really crazy gravedigger.
Well, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is he's very obviously, I think, schizophrenic because he did believe that these dead children were his children and that he was going to bring them back to life somehow, and he just had yet to figure it out.
That kind of person needs constant care.
They
And
do.
I mean, he may be doing just fine in the facility, but that's because he's in the facility with constantly being
Well, he's
watched and
medicated.
monitored and cared and therapy. And it's different than if you're just like, okay, go out on your own now.
Yeah. And he did state that if he got out, he would do it again.
Yeah.
So he also, I guess, he wants to get out, go back to work, and get married. I guess he has like an online girlfriend
Oh, no.
that he plans to marry, and she's, I think, 25 years old.
What is wrong with these women?
Yeah.
There's always somebody out there that's like trying to get with these weirdos.
Yeah. But that's all I have on the case of Anatoly Moskvin.
Yeah, no, I did not know this one. I was getting this confused with another case.
What case?
About a guy that falls in love with a girl. I think her name is like Maria or something, and she dies and he digs her up. And pretty much the same thing, though. He turns her into a doll, but he does some pretty questionable things, of course, with her body. But I thought that was going to be this one, so no, I did not know this one.
Yeah, I'm shocked this one's not more commonly discussed.
Yeah, no, I've never heard it. Well, thank you for the nightmare you have bestowed inside my brain. Oh my God.
I try to find those unique ones to give you.
Yeah, because I already watch and listen to so much bizarre, messed up stuff. Yeah, this one's definitely going to sit with me for a while.
Yeah. So if your kids start collecting dolls, just check out the dolls and make sure they're dolls.
No, thank you. I'm glad mine are all scared of dolls, so I don't think I have to worry about that. Ugh.
I hope everyone looks at the picture.
Please don't. I think the picture, I don't like that its lips are so big either. That's really creeping me out.
I know. I don't know what that's about.
It's so disturbing when you look at it and realize there's a human being underneath that. And a child at that. And they are just kind of like thrown around in this hoarding.
Yeah, they're just situation. On piles of books and things. Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go. Just when you think like it can't get any creepier out in the world, then you hear a story like this.
But with that, we'll say goodnight.
And pleasant nightmares.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.